Hello, this is Alex at Ithaca Cybersecurity, and on this week's edition of Profit Insights, we have an ode to entrepreneurship. To take risks and deal with uncertainty today, to achieve outsized returns at an as yet unspecified later date is, I believe, the kernel of what it means to be an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs strive not just for the consequential cash flows from their ingenuity, creativity, calculated risk-taking and enterprise, but to leave their mark on the world. Together, entrepreneurs toil towards a vision that leverages the natural laws of capitalism for the prosperity of all. And I've been privileged enough to pursue this auspicious career for 8 years at the time of writing, which is June 2026. It is the very uncertainty that fortune will grant me the freedoms of another 2, 12, or 20 years in opus that is the prime motivator. To be able to swing for the fences and miss, or more commonly just fall slightly short and swing again and again and again in eternum, is intrinsically a privilege that too few of us afford ourselves. It is misguided to assume the endpoint, be that the yacht, the holiday house, the now obsolete concept of a retirement, or even the more noble concept of having achieved one's vision, is the reason for all the grift. As we've already defined, entrepreneurs take risks today for outsized returns and an uncertain endpoint. And the unspecified nature of the endpoint is exactly the point. To succeed in the long run, entrepreneurs must delight in the actions and the mechanics of the day to day. But politically and economically, entrepreneurship has traditionally been viewed as simply a vehicle for the creation of jobs. Perhaps inevitably, for an entrepreneur who has made their fortune in the labour-intensive hospitality sector, Luke Johnson, the backer of Pizza Express, Gale's Bakery, Brompton, is in alignment with this point of view. I believe, and this is a quote from Luke Johnson's book, Start It Up, which I very much recommend. I believe it is a very basic instinct from early childhood to want to make a positive difference to society. Creating an enterprise is perhaps the most effective way of doing that ever devised. What can be more important than actually creating jobs? The partner at Boulderton Capital and contemporary commentator, that's a bit unfair on Luke. Luke is also a contemporary commentator. But the other contemporary commentator, James Wise, broadens this definition of entrepreneur as not just those who set out to make employment for others. More than 60% of business owners in the USA never go on to hire more than one other person. Small and medium-sized enterprises account for over 90% of businesses and 50% of employment of the worldwide population. In the most populous countries in the world, such as India, over 90% of the working age population are employed in the informal sector, sharing many of the precarious risks and volatility in earnings as entrepreneurs do. And that was a quote from James Wise's book, which I'll have to scroll to the bottom to remember. Startup Century. Startup Century. Again, a very, very good listen or read. Wise does hit closest to the mark in my view. The willingness to take risks and the broad and the question and the willingness to take risks and question the status quo are intrinsic to entrepreneurship and human progress more broadly. It is this risk-taking mindset, more than one's ability to flatter ego, by providing employment, that unites the dispersed group of vagabonds and self-starters that identify, knowingly or otherwise, as entrepreneurs. The instinct to take risks in defiance of the majority view can lead to more misses and miss and pivot moments than home runs, but the majority is actually wrong more often than you might think. So, for example, when the majority would sell in a bear market, entrepreneur will accumulate. When the majority go Mag 7, Magnificent 7, the entrepreneur will be improving physical letters. When the majority go to hire purchase, the entrepreneur goes to Peugeot 205. When the majority goes all-inclusive, the entrepreneur sells the Atlantic. And when the majority sell their time for money, the entrepreneur sells someone else's. Curiosity to the point of seemingly obtuse contrarianism is a defining characteristic, certainly, of the entrepreneur. Indeed, the differences between the majority, those that typically seek safety and assurance by looking to the actions of others to decide upon their path, and often hoarding their monies in the process, and the entrepreneur who consistently questions, innovates, and puts their money to work as capital, has sound precedent in economic theory. Indeed, none other than the founding 20th century economist John Maynard Keynes is in his seminal theory of employment, interest, and money, stresses the importance of entrepreneurship as a vehicle for the effective deployment of capital in his concept of the liquidity premium. So, and I quote from the aforementioned, that the world, after several millennia of steady individual saving, is so poor as it is in accumulated capital assets, is to be explained, in my opinion, neither by the improvident propensities of mankind, nor even by the destruction of war, but by the high liquidity premiums formerly attaching to the ownership of land and now attaching to money. I differ in this view, from the older view as expressed by Marshall with an unusual dogmatic force in his Principles of Economics. And this is a quote from Marshall that Keynes quotes within his passage. Everyone is aware that the accumulation of wealth is held in check at the rate of interest so far sustained by the preference which the great mass of humanity have for the present over deferred gratifications, or in other words, by their unwillingness to wait. Keynes's liquidity premium is the extra value people attach to holding an asset simply because it is easy to convert it into cash quickly without losing value in the process. Money is the most liquid asset there is. You can spend it instantly on anything and at any time. Before Keynes's time, feudalism ensured that land held a similar premium because owning land gave you the flexibility, security, and social power that other assets simply couldn't match. Keynes's argument opposes Marshall's. People don't hoard money because they're impatient and they want to spend it now. They hoard it because holding money feels safe. Having liquid assets like cash or formerly land in Marshall's time gives people a sense of security and optionality that they value so highly that they're willing to forego the productive investment that would generate real wealth. And the consequences of this hoarding are, in my view, being felt by the UK at present. Capital is sitting idle. Instead of being invested into businesses, equipment, and productive enterprise that would compound over time, wealth has been accumulating in liquid but unproductive form. The economy suffers not because people are spendthrift, but because they're too attached to holding liquid assets rather than deploying them effectively. I started my career as an entrepreneur 8 years ago with below average grades, £30,000, a phone book, and a new family to support. If I can do it, you can do, only much better. The vicissitudes are not to be underestimated. But for some of us, there's only one path. So stop hoarding, take action today, and start it up. Your legacy awaits.